Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm hoping this is working. Nope. Yes. No, it isn't. How about that? Just show. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No. Yep. Is that actually? Yay! Let there be sound, and there was. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what I believe is Wrexham's first public hustings, with 5 days to go until everyone votes. It's bizarre because for the past month, this, what we call PERDA, started right at the end of March. And back then the polls read Labour 30-something% nationally, the Conservatives 30-something% nationally, hung Parliament. And today, I looked at the polls, and one of them, Populous, said Labour 33%, Conservatives 33%, hung Parliament. So events like this really matter. What happens on Thursday really matters. I don't need to tell you about Wrexham or what's changed in Wrexham in the past 5 years since this last election was held. This is by way of being probably Wrexham's strangest pub quiz, because there are no right answers and no one wins anything apart from a seat in Parliament. I'm not going to introduce these people because they're going to introduce themselves. They've got all of 90 seconds in which to do it. So I hold the floor over with their Madonna-style microphones to, first, Carrie Harper from Plaid, Cymru.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Wales has taken centre stage in this UK election, and that's happened for one reason. And that's because the Party of Wales has taken every opportunity to speak up for our country and to put our needs and aspirations on the agenda. And if we want to keep Wales on the agenda after this election, if we want to put Wrexham on the agenda, then we need a strong team of Plaid Cymru MPs standing up for us and going down to London to shake up this old boys club. In the midst of expenses, scandals, cash for influence, tax cuts for the rich, we can all clearly see that Westminster has lost its moral compass. Through the vast inequality across the UK, the domination of corporate interests and lobbying in defining public policy, we can all see that Westminster represents a growing democratic deficit. And with the commitment now from all the London parties to more austerity, to more economic attacks on ordinary people, the most vulnerable and those with the least, we can see that Westminster is morally bankrupt. Plaid Cymru wants to change that. Our priorities in this election are to end austerity in order to strengthen and save our local services, to lock the Tories out of government and to win equality for our country by ensuring that Wales gets the same deal as Scotland on powers and on funding. Plaid Cymru will make sure that Wales matters in Westminster.
Carrie, that is your 90 seconds. Sorry about that. There we go. Next, a gentleman who not only has a very young un, less than 1 year old? 11 months old, but is also fighting an election, David Munnerley from the Green Party.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming, and thanks to Georgia for putting this on, although for someone who hates public speaking, it's not exactly my idea of a great time. But that makes you probably wondering why am I doing this? Obviously, you might be aware of the threat of unconventional gas drilling around Wrexham, which is a real issue. Coupled with this has been what I've perceived, and a lot of people have perceived, to be a complete lack of democracy. Wrexham Council overturned this decision, and then it was turned over by one man, which to me is a complete lack of democracy. It then went to Parliament, and it was included in the infrastructure bill, and unfortunately a huge number of MPs abstained from voting against this, which once again says to me, why are people not listening? Why are MPs not listening to the people? I believe it's time for people to take back the power. I think Westminster is letting us down, and I think we really need to start thinking about the future, for future generations. We need to start thinking about our legacy. We need to stop exploiting people. We need to stop destroying the earth, and we need to stop killing people in the name of austerity. The Green Party feels that we need to put social justice and ecological sustainability at the heart of all policies, and that is where I think we need to go. Thank you.
You did that. Absolutely to time. Well done. Oh, well done. Third, Ian Lucas from the Labour Party.
Hello there, I'm Ian Lucas. I'm the Welsh Labour candidate. I'm very proud that I've represented Wrexham for the last 14 years. When in Wrexham, a positive place, has made real progress. For the first time ever, we've secured our own university, and we've been able to attract business and jobs here. But in the last 5 years, I believe this town has gone backwards, because wages have fallen in our local economy. The biggest fall in Wales has happened in Wrexham in the last year. And the average family is £1,600 worse off today than it was in 2010. That has presented itself on our high streets, to our businesses, and we feel worse off. But we have a government that is telling us that things are getting better. That's not the case. We need change. We need change. What we need to do is build on Glyndŵr University, on Coleg Cambria, and improve our local infrastructure so that we can make sure that our people here become better off by securing higher skills, by building a local economy that uses the talent of the people that we produce in our education system, and that creates wealth for our local people in our local economy. We all know that Wrexham is vibrant, it's positive, but it's been frustrated by a UK government that has held it back by meeting the needs of people who have nothing in common with this town. We need change, and we need a Labour government.
There was an extra 5 seconds for nothing there. There we go. Fourth out of our 7 candidates, Niall Plevin-kelly from UKIP.
Good evening. If somebody had told me 6 months ago that I would be sitting here now as a political party candidate for Westminster, I would have looked at them in a very strange way. I'm a complete newcomer to politics, but the reason I'm here is because I genuinely believe that the current political system in the UK is broken. It does not work anymore. I'm a staunch advocate of political reform, and I'm also a staunch advocate of Wrexham. Wrexham is not represented adequately in Westminster, nor in Cardiff Bay, as is North Wales. It has a massive potential, and it needs to unlock that potential. And we need to put the infrastructure, as Ian said, into place to really get this place back on its feet again. There are business rates stifling small businesses in the centre of Wrexham. This needs to be addressed. There are parking issues in the centre of Wrexham. These need to be addressed. Why I'm going for Parliament rather than just a local council is because I need to make Wrexham's voice heard. at the highest levels in Westminster. That is why I'm here. Thank you.
And in the blue corner, Andrew Atkinson for the Conservative Party.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Atkinson. I'm the Welsh Conservative Party candidate for Wrexham. Wrexham's my hometown. I was born and raised here. I went to St Giles School and Penley School, and this is where I started my business when I was 17 years old. I'm really loud. I'm really passionate about our town and making it the best that it can be. I think we've got a brilliant town, but it's got potential to be so much more. The main thing that made me want to stand was sorting out issues in our town centre, really working to put the heart and soul back into it, and really sort of working to attract more businesses. I've got some experience of this as a councillor. That was something that really drove me to achieve these sort of things when we lived elsewhere. And I want to bring these same principles to Wrexham. I want to attract more jobs and more industry and more high-paying jobs, linking that to our university to make sure that we match the skills with the jobs at the other end, working with apprenticeships and vocational training. I want to make sure that if we're attracting industry, that we've got the best infrastructure possible. We've got the best roads, we've got access to super-fast broadband, the best mobile signal, 3G, 4G, everything that we can possibly have in Wrexham to make it the most attractive and viable place to base a business. And that means also making sure that we've got a good world-class NHS service here at Wrexham. We've got good education, something that will really attract people who want to base a business here to provide more jobs and more prosperity. Thank you very much.
Now, back in 2010, the Liberal Democrats came second in Wrexham as a seat. Standing for the Liberal Democrats this time, Rob.
Okay, well, my name's Rob Walsh. I'm the Welsh Liberal Democrat candidate, as Rob's just said. And the main reason, obviously, I'm standing is to bring back faith in democracy into Wrexham. Now, first of all, I want to say a big thank you to Georgia and the team for arranging all this. Because I think there's been too much focus on the national leaders debate, because this is where it's really at. Because you're going to be voting for a member of parliament, okay? Not for a government. We cannot elect governments in this country. That is one of the greatest myths of our democracy. So I think your job tonight, and everyone watching later on, is to look at all of us very carefully and see who you think should represent you at the highest level. Now, I'm a Welsh Liberal Democrat. I'm proud to be a Welsh Liberal Democrat, because I share their values of fair play and of balance. But the party is not my #1 priority, the people of Wrexham are. So that's why I'm standing, and I believe with my local background, I have an ideal profile to be Wrexham's next MP. Now, some of you might think, if you listen to the national pundits, that this result is in the bag. It doesn't have to be in the bag. Most people haven't voted yet. Okay? Now, in Wrexham, we do things a bit differently. 23 years ago, I was stood just a few feet up there, and I watched Wrexham beat Arsenal in the FA Cup 3rd round. So we do things differently in Wrexham. So I asked people in Wrexham, let's shock Britain again by causing a surprise result. So I hope you all vote for me on May the 7th. Thank you very much.
That's the first time I've heard of anyone calling on a Mickey Thomas free kick in election time. Last, but by absolutely no means least, a man who tells me he's worn out almost 3 pairs of shoes pounding the mean streets of Wrexham, braving the Yorkshire Terriers on the doorstep, the independent candidate, Brian Edwards.
Well, I'm looking round, I can see 1 or 2 people I know. I'm desperately looking for friendly faces, but you can't win them all, can you? So, my name's Brian Edwards. I'm standing as independent candidate on 7th of May for Wrexham, obviously. I'd like to tell you my party line's views, but there's only me, so whatever is here, these are my views. I am the oldest candidate on the panel this evening, and hopefully the wisest. I am now officially retired, but I spent most of my career as a teacher, primary school teacher, and a journalist with the local newspapers. Few other jobs along the way for short periods. I'm a local man, born and raised in Coedpoeth. I'd like to begin tonight by quoting the former New Zealand Prime Minister Norman Kirk when he was attempting to define what people were looking for in life and ipso facto from their appointed political representative. Somewhere to live, somewhere to work, someone to love, and something to hope for. And I believe that's what everyone needs for the future, hope. And if elected as Wrexham's MP, that's what I would attempt to provide for everyone. I'm standing on several points at a local and national level, and they will become apparent as the evening wears on. Suffice it to say at this stage that they include a reclawing of money, regeneration, abolishment, and harsher penalties.
Ladies and gentlemen, your candidates. Now what's going to happen is we've got 3 questions. Guys will have a bit of a statement on it, then a debate. Then we break for drinks. And if you're a Newcastle fan, you'll need them. And then second half, another few questions, and then hopefully wrap it up by about 10 o'clock. Okay. Now our first question comes from Adam via Twitter. Is Adam here potentially? Oh well. Is he? Adam, I'm really going to embarrass you. Come on up. Come on up, you. Do you want to come up and ask in person? I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Right. Adam's question via Twitter is this. Specifically, how would you, as an MP and your government, implement the dramatic improvements needed regarding Wrexham Minor Hospital and NHS services in general? And that one first to Andrew from the Conservatives.
Thank you. I think the first thing that I've got to say is that it would be disingenuous of me to say that if elected as the MP for Wrexham, I would have any direct influence over healthcare and how healthcare services are provided here in Wrexham, because these are obviously Welsh Assembly issues. But that doesn't mean that I would avoid these issues. You know, I think we need to show some leadership. We need to work with Assembly members. We need to work with everybody involved. We had a BMA, a British Medical Association, hustings recently, and I think it's really important to get out there and listen to the doctors and the professionals in the industry and actually hear what matters to them and what changes they think needs to be made. We need more investment in the NHS. We've seen £12 billion over the last 5 years in the NHS in the UK, which has sent more money to Wales. Sadly, that wasn't invested in the NHS in Wales. But the point that I want to make is that I think I'm a firm believer in the fact that our NHS and our discussions about the NHS are far too political, and I don't think that's helpful at all. We've got a lot of problems in the NHS in Wales, but we've got a lot of problems in the NHS in England as well. It isn't perfect there either. So it's too political, and I would like to see the NHS, it might be a bit idealistic of me, taken out of politics to find a way that we can have all the parties signed up to a long-term view.
The guillotine of time. Sorry. Went into a stride there as well. Next to David Munnerley from the Green Party.
To someone who's completely new, I will put my hand up and say I do get slightly confused between the Welsh and the English system. I need to revise that. But basically, the Green Party firmly believes that health should not be bought and sold, and that seems to be the big problem. I know friends who work in the NHS, and they tell me that what has happened to the NHS is this fragmentation of services is not helping. They can't seem, people who work in the NHS can't seem to deliver the care they want to, because certain sections are being sold off to private firms, and this is causing the major issues. And of course, we do need more investment. I think Germany and France both spend more on their health service than we do. So really, we just need to invest more and stop privatising the NHS. Thank you.
David, thank you for that. Next up, because the NHS is always an issue, whichever election you're fighting, ever since it was founded in 1948, Niall Plevin-kelly.
It's a devolved issue. Nevertheless, if UKIP had a say in it and I had a say in it as an MP, I will get through as many of the items on my list in 60 seconds as I can. An additional £3 billion funding per year by the end of the first Parliament. 8,000 new GPs, 20,000 new nurses, 3,000 new midwives. We'd reinstate the state-enrolled nurses and fund a return to practice training for both nurses who've taken a career break and GPs who wish to return to GP practices. Okay. We'd reduce the DP targets, the data collection and the appraisal work, to give them more time to actually deal with patients. We would fund extra consultants for accident and emergency departments and improve their working decisions. We would pilot a scheme of putting GPs into accident and emergency departments because, as everybody knows, a lot of people go to AE because they don't get access to their GPs. Put a GP into A&E and they have instant access to a GP. put mental health on a complete and equal parity with physical health, a doctor whole-being approach to it. Anybody being admitted to hospital with any sign of mental illness or whatever will be given a full and instant appraisal as to their mental well-being as well as their physical well-being, with specialists for pregnant women and new mothers of children less than 12 months old. Any... excuse me, sorry.
Can I interrupt you mid-cough? I do apologise now. Next up, Plaid-kelly, Carrie Harper.
Well, we know that we've lost 50 beds from the Myler just in the last 5 years, and that's coincided with a 15% rise in the amount of patients needing treatment. That's been compounded again by the loss of local community hospitals from Llangollen and from Flint as well. So that explains why we are seeing ambulances queuing up outside the Myler and why people are waiting so long for operations. We've also seen the use of expensive agency nurses as well, so there are clearly some issues there in terms of workforce recruitment and planning the longer term. And I think the Health Board have got some serious questions to answer in terms of that. Plaid-Cymru don't support the current drive by the Labour government to centralise services. One of the biggest issues that we face in Wales is the fact that we currently have less doctors per head than almost any other country in the EU. So it's vital that we tackle that as soon as possible. And one of our pledges is for 1,000 doctors.
Beautifully wrapped up there. Thank you ever so much, Carrie. Next, 60 seconds for an institution that's lasted more than 60 years. Ian Lucas.
One of the reasons we have fewer doctors in Wales is we have a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom who described Offa's Dyke as the line between life and death. That is a real disgrace, and we should not talk about the National Health Service, which is precious to all of us, in Wales and in England, in that way. We know that we have a real crisis in health right across the UK because we have such profound increased demand, and particularly amongst our elderly population. We have to have more GPs, because the reason that there are such problems in admissions at A&E in Wrexham is because we have a shortage of GPs and of access to primary care. We also need to ensure that we can discharge people who are ill into the local community. And it's disingenuous to say that there's been no cut in health funding, because social care funding has been cut, and that has had an enormous effect on NHS care right across the United Kingdom. So we need more resources, which we will bring also through the mansion tax.
Probably about 1 minute and 7 seconds there, but there we go. Let you off that one. Now, the NHS during the Second World War was the brainchild of Lord Beveridge, who was a Liberal, for the Liberal Democrats, Rob Walsh.
Right, the answer to this question quite simply is we need to increase funding. Okay, ring-fencing NHS funding on its own is not enough, and that applies to both England and Wales. So the Liberal Democrats would like to see an extra £8 billion go into the NHS. That will equate to £450 million in Wales. What we'd like to see that money invested in is primarily more nurses, okay, to help with the workload of current nurses, and also that will improve patient care. And the other thing which has been ignored for far too long has been mental health. Mental health, well, it's been ignored, and if you don't deal with mental health, that can lead to physical health problems later. So it's about time we dealt with that. The other thing we need to do is to stop using the NHS as a political football, because senior members of the Labour Party and the Conservatives have turned this into almost like a Wales-England battle. It doesn't help, and I ask you just to stop it. Let's work together on the NHS.
Brian Edwards, we give you the whole of the NHS to sort, Wrexham Myler to improve, at the 60 seconds in which to do it.
Well, the blatantly obvious factor is money. Much more hard cash is needed to put into the NHS. Nursing staff at the Myler often harshly and very often unfairly criticised, and I think they're doing a wonderful job in the circumstances. They're understaffed and overworked, for heaven's sake. They're doing a great job there. We need more homegrown hospital doctors, surgeons, GPs, nurses, as well as more auxiliary staff. Like it or not, another factor is mass immigration. Maybe Wrexham has not taken the full brunt on this, but it's still a massive factor which is stretching hospitals, GP surgeries and certainly schools in the area to the limit. Where will the money come from? I envisage a 60 pence in the pound tax on £200,000 incomes, a mansion tax on properties over £1.5 million and a rapid end to overseas aid budget, excepting of course for natural disasters in Nepal, etc. Britain must and will quite rightly help with such aid. But a massive £12.2 billion plus, it's either unwanted or largely wasted and misappropriated.
Ryan, sorry about that. The dead hand of time falls. You're into your flow as well. Very, very rough straw poll to do here, but obviously healthcare in Wales is the purview of the Welsh Assembly, the Welsh Government. How many people are happy, not with Wrexham Myler specifically, but with like the structure of the Welsh NHS? How many people are content that it's going in the way it should be going right now? Put your hands up if you're brave enough. Okay, how many people think something has to be changed structurally, somewhere it's not going right? Okay guys, every time there's an election, the NHS is always an issue. Open to you all now. What on earth can we do to improve Wrexham Myler? What on earth can we do structurally? Andrew?
The first thing that I want to point out is I think that a couple of us have made points that it's too political, and I think it's interesting that we talk about immigration when we talk about the NHS, because I think we have to recognise, and we need a lot more of a sensible public debate on this, that most immigrants who come here to work, they come here to contribute, so they're therefore paying for the NHS. So without them, we'd be pretty knackered, to use a technical term. I think we've got to remember that.
And many immigrants actually work in the NHS.
And work in the NHS,
highly
indeed, yeah.
skilled people who provide excellent care.
And that brings me to a point that I made before about the British Medical Association that myself and Rob and a couple of others were at recently. Those doctors that we spoke to, if we're not speaking out of turn, will tell you that yes, we need more funding, we desperately need more funding, but they will be the first to tell you that funding alone is not the answer. Even they will tell you there needs to be a sensible restructuring. Not the sort of thing we see where one government comes in, drastically changes it, another one comes in, changes it the other way, before that, just as things are starting to sort of, change and they're starting to pay off, we're already changing them again. That's not what they want to see, but they do want to see changes, and they do want to see more doctors and nurses on the front line being actually given the resources that they need.
But at the start of this election, surely all of you know, first week, the Conservatives said we will find out 8 billion extra for NHS healthcare. Labour said they will find billions extra, they're not going to be committed to the title. As you sort of addressed there, is throwing money at the issue the answer, or is it just the structure is completely wrong?
No, well, just throwing money at it just won't get it to work, because I think we've seen in the public sector in the past money thrown at projects and things haven't worked. You've got to target it in the right areas, and that's why I believe the Liberal Democrats have the right idea by targeting in nurses and mental health.
Ian?
I think integration of health and social care is absolutely key to solving issues within the NHS. We have a historic distinction which has led to some being means tested and some not being means tested. There could be a huge amount of money saved by having someone like a patient advocate who can deal with individuals who are travelling in this system and are dealt with well at one stage but badly at another. We really need to grasp that the patient is at the centre of the NHS, not the structures, and each individual needs to be treated well at every stage of that patient journey.
Okay, in Wales, obviously, the structure of healthcare has been changed over successive assembly governments. Are you all happy is possibly the wrong words, content that the current health system with Betsy Cadwallader is fit for purpose?
No.
Niall?
Betsy Cadwallader being a specific example, we're in the remit of Betsy Cadwallader here. As a health board, it is just too physically large. Administratively, it is too large. It covers far too large a geographical area. It really needs to be broken down into a much smaller organisation. And the way to do this is to bring back the district health authorities, reduce the expenditure, and also, I mean, there is just excessive management across the board within the health service, and it really needs to be stripped away to the bare essentials. Not only that, but these managers need to be accountable to the health boards. At the minute, then, they are beyond control at all. They just do as they wish. If you want to get the resources back in, funding, yes, but also strip away a lot of the unnecessary admin, cut down on the wastage and increase staffing levels where they're actually needed at the clinical phase.
Brian.
Well, people said earlier, billions of pounds poured into the NHS. It's not the only solution, but it will help, obviously, considerably. As I was saying earlier, if we could cut back on the overseas aid bill, the money raised could be put into the NHS and also into education, where it's also desperately needed. Grotesquely long working hours are pushing many doctors and surgeons into going private or even emigrating. We need more staff, better salaries and a decreased workload.
Ian.
I think that at a time when we're thinking about local government restructuring within Wales, we need to, pursuing this line of integrated health and social care, to consider the health structures at the same time, so that we have templates that we can work from to integrate health and social care at local government and health board level. I agree entirely that Betsy Cadwallader is too large. I think that when we had the North East Wales Trust, that operated much more successfully, I think, at that time.
Are you happy with the shape, the manning of the NHS? Do these billions need to be spent, or do you just need to reset? Do you need to rethink the structure entirely? Do we almost need to go back to
Rob,
basics?
there's other people on the stage, you know.
Yes.
There's other people. Keep it to one or two people.
I'm not actually, but...
Well, you are actually. Yes. It should get a balance, please. Yeah.
Carrie?
You're doing a great job, Rob. You're doing a great job. You carry on. Absolutely.
Sorry, Carrie, I was sort of waiting for you to indicate, but no, please, fire away.
Well, one point I would make to come back to Brian is actually the Miler recently had to recruit 70 Spanish nurses to fill a staffing gap as an emergency. So I think that gives you one example of what contribution immigration actually does make to our health service. I completely disagree with everything that you said
why
there.
can't we have homegrown people in those jobs? Why do we need the Spanish?
We need to train homegrown doctors. We've got plans to recruit 1,000 doctors. It takes time to train people,
Yes.
but what we need is better
Where's that
planning
been in
and
the
better
past?
leadership within the NHS, so we don't end up in a situation where we have these emergencies and we have these staffing gaps to fill. So that'd be the first point I would make. But basically, our NHS essentially faces two threats here in Wales. It's been underfunded by the Tories in London, and it's been mismanaged by the Labour Party.
David from the Green Party, what do you reckon?
Well, I'll get it in now. Maybe if we scrap Trident.
We pay for everything.
Well, they would save £100 billion, actually, Andrew, wouldn't it? They'd pay for a lot.
Really, that's so that's the potential answer, literally.
Well, it would certainly help on the. Yeah.
I mean, you're obviously on the doorstep. You've all been campaigning now. How often does the NHS come up in what people say? Carrie?
It comes up all the time. Absolutely all the time, especially in Wrexham. People obviously see the ambulances queuing up outside the mile. They're asking, why on earth would Betsy Cadwallader close our community hospitals and reduce the number of beds we've got? It just doesn't make any sense.
Health is an issue because we all care profoundly about our National Health Service and we want the best possible service. But we do need to have more general practitioners and focus on more assistance in primary care, because I think that one of the real shortages within our Wrexham community is in primary care, and that's something that's been said to me many times on the doorstep in this campaign.
Fantastic stuff. Finally, Brian.
Going back to David's point, it's a good point about scrapping Trident, but what about national security? With Mr. Putin now sending his boats in, his planes, can we risk national security and defence? Are we not? Do we need to secure this country?
Okay, well, finally.
Just a tiny point. One of the main points that was brought up with me and Rob at the meeting we were at was actually attracting and retaining staff seems to be one of the biggest problems that we have here in Wrexham, that we don't have the links that we used to have with Manchester and Liverpool universities, and I think we need to really work at that, because a lot of people who are trained sort of in Cardiff stay down in Cardiff, in Swansea, in Newport, and we need to make Wrexham as attractive a destination for these young doctors and nurses and graduates as possible, so we get the best and the brightest staff here.
Guys, thank you ever so much. Right, on to our second question, which is from Damien. I'm not sure, is Damien here and brave enough to...
Hello.
Hello, Damien. Do you want to come and ask your question in person, sir?
Hello. Yeah.
There we go.
As MP for Wrexham, what powers would you support being transferred to the Welsh Government from Westminster?
Well asked. Right. And that's first to Mr. UKIP, Niall.
I thought long and hard about this one. As you know, UKIP at the minute don't have any involvement in the Welsh Assembly at all. And I was going to come up with a couple of suggestions. But my main point is that on some of the issues that are already devolved, i.e. health, employment, and education and the economy, I'd actually like to see the Welsh Assembly get a decent grip and sort those out before I start granting any further powers to them.
Fantastic and brief in 2 points as well. Next,
please.
David from the Green Party.
Okay, this is official Green Party policy. Okay, so the Greens have long supported devolution and believe the people of Wales should enjoy the same degree of autonomy that they want as expressed in a referendum. The Greens would increase real powers at all levels, from local government to the Assembly, and we should aim to have the same powers as Scotland. And obviously, a very green issue is energy. Wales should have control of that energy, and obviously if we want to move forward with renewable energy, Wales will have a surplus of renewable energy which could then be sold back, hopefully, if we're not being fracked, to England. So, yeah. I'm in favour of more local authority power, so Wrexham should be a centre for North Wales.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. Next, Brian, as a potential independent MP, what powers are you going to hand over to Cardiff?
Well, again, initially, I know we've touched on the NHS, but although it's ostensibly controlled by the Welsh Assembly, it's quite a confusing situation with the Barnett formula, which is weighted heavily in favour of Scotland, by the way. The Barnett formula funds Welsh Government, and decisions on the NHS in England have direct consequences on the money that's able to be spent in Wales. Mark Drakeford, the AM responsible for the NHS in Wales, said recently, "We're effectively tied through this mechanism to policy decisions from Westminster. Let's stop the confusion and give full NHS power to Wales." Policing, well, this is a very important issue. It's already devolved to Scotland and Northern Ireland currently. Wales has to pick up financial shortcomings in matters such as the housing of recently released prisoners. There's also fast-growing demand for Welsh control over the whole question of law and order in Wales. Taxation. Currently, the Welsh Assembly is not allowed to levy any taxes except for council tax. The Silk Commission suggests the Welsh Government will have power to vary income tax by 2020. Not quite finished, but...
Brian, well done. You've given away so many powers there. There we go. Now, next, for 1 whole minute, as someone who, until the dissolution of Parliament for 14 years, has been a Westminster MP in a seat which also has an Assembly member.
Yes.
What extra powers, Ian Lucas, would you like to see potentially go to Cardiff?
Well, Labour will devolve powers over fracking, over policing, and over the work programme and job creation to the Assembly in this Parliament. That's a process that we have continued whilst we were in government. In the Labour Party, we were, of course, the party of devolution that introduced the devolution legislation in the first place. But I also think it's really important that within Wales, we have more devolution to North Wales, to North East Wales, because we have a very particular environment within Wrexham, which is a very cross-border environment, where issues that are vitally important, for example, the A55, A4, A3 roundabout to Wrexham, are affecting us daily, and we need to continue to have a voice on cross-border issues, something that is threatened by Conservative proposals for English voice for English laws.
Which segged in beautifully, and yeah, most of us have suffered on that roundabout at some stage or other. To the blue corner, Andrew Atkinson. What do you reckon about that?
I support more powers for the Welsh Assembly. I want to see more powers being made closer to home. The difficulty that I've got with it is that I don't think devolution has necessarily always reached North Wales, and we need to get a much more work into rebalancing. The St David's Day agreement recently launched by the Conservatives hands over significant and paves the way to hand over significantly more powers to the Welsh Government. I think one of the most interesting ones is the reserved powers model, which is what Scotland has at the moment and we haven't had, which basically, because there's a lot of confusion around who does what, is it Westminster, is it the Welsh Assembly, and the reserved powers model actually means that basically the Assembly has everything except for what is reserved, and that brings much more clarity to the situation so that everybody knows what's going on. As has been already mentioned, this would give powers over fracking, over ports, over taxi, bus regulations, setting speed limits, energy projects, reducing the voting age to 16, as some people want. That would give power over what kind of electoral system that they have, or that we have here. And interestingly, the funding floor is a really big one. This would pave the way for a referendum on income tax devolution, and actually make sure that there's a fair funding floor for Wales to make sure that I better stop talking.
Sorry, guys, I've been through time. It's done. Right next to you, Rob Walsh from Liberal. Rob, what if you become MP for Wrexham, go to Westminster? What are you going to hand over to Cardiff?
Well, the simple answer is as many things as possible, and I'll give my reasons for that. Is that never before have we seen so much power go to the Welsh Assembly. The Welsh Assembly influences our lives more than the UK government does now, our everyday lives at least. And so if you think this election's important, next year's Assembly elections, in my view, are going to be even more important. They're going to have a bigger impact on your lives. Obviously, Brian's already mentioned the Silk Commission. I support many of the recommendations made by that. And I also welcome the St David's Day agreement, but I don't think it goes far enough. So I think that some of the issues such as energy, lowering the voting age, income tax varying powers, I think are important, but I would like to see more such as rail, speed limits and youth justice come onto this as well. I think the important thing is we need to hold this Welsh Government to account, okay, because I don't think they've been held to account properly by the Welsh people.
Whatever the result is come Friday morning, Plaid Cymru could hold an incredibly important part in the future negotiations in the electoral balance. Carrie, Harper, what would you like to see your colleagues in Westminster give to your colleagues in Cardiff?
Well, Plaid Cymru are calling for Wales to have the same powers as Scotland. What we've currently got is a third-rate devolution settlement. There's no logic to that. There's no reason why it's that way, and it needs addressing. Wales should have the going rate for devolution, so that would mean the immediate devolution of a further 18 areas to the Welsh Government. That includes, for instance, energy, broadcasting and criminal justice. But what we also want to see is a written constitution for Wales, which will be guided by the people of Wales, not politicians. And by developing our constitution in that way, it allows us to have a discussion as a nation about the type of country we want to live in, not just about where powers should be held. But the bottom line is we're every bit as much of a nation as Scotland is, and we shouldn't be treated any differently.
Well, okay, guys, the drift of power over the past 14 years going towards Cardiff. How does the relationship between Westminster and the Assembly continue?
I think one of the most important things that we need to do within the United Kingdom is to have a constitutional convention to set the arrangements for the constitution of the United Kingdom and to define the relationships between the constituent nations of the United Kingdom and the central parliament. That's an overdue task that we want to take on straight away when we're in government, because we spend too much energy in politics talking about defining the different relationships within the United Kingdom rather than changing people's lives for the better, and we need to focus on that in government.
Andrew.
2 points I want to make is we've talked, I think somebody, it might have been Niall who said something on the panel about supporting more powers when they can look after what they've already got, sort of thing. I think the important thing that we've got to realise is that we have the power to change the government, and in Wales we've never really done that. In Westminster we never say, You know, people say to me on the doorstep sometimes, I wish we didn't have the Welsh Assembly, just get rid of it. Actually, in Westminster, we don't say that. We say change the government. We vote somebody in, we vote somebody out, and it changes. In Wales, we do not do that, and I think we have the power to change that government. So actually, and the other point that I want to make, just quickly if I can, is that I think in a post sort of UK sort of referendum, Scotland, you know, everybody talks about, as Ian has mentioned, there's English votes for English laws and issues like that. And we talk about Scottish MPs. We don't have a focus on Welsh MPs and the fact that I'm all for more powers to the Assembly, but we have to recognise, we have to have a sensible conversation as a nation, that the more powers we hand to the Assembly means there is a smaller role for a Welsh MP. And if you compare their workload, when you consider what an Assembly member does, to the role of an English MP, for example, there is a completely different workload. And I fully support having less Welsh MPs. We have to do something to recognise that and cut down the numbers.
Rob.
Yeah. I think the important thing is I'd like to see more federal United Kingdom with more powers devolved, well, not just to Wales and Scotland, but also to different English regions. And I don't even want to stop there. I want to see more power go to local areas, to local councils, because local people make the best decisions for their areas.
Brian.
Just go briefly back to what I was saying about the Silk Commission. It also says a referendum should be held on this matter. And if implemented, this would allow the Welsh Government responsibility of raising a quarter of its own budget. There are far more powers, as Rob said, why not everything coming over to Wales? And I would like to see far more powers controlled by Cardiff. The entire economic system and national security, i.e. basically the defence of Wales, should certainly come over.
Carrie, could Westminster become a bit of an irrelevance to Plaid Cymru if Cardiff takes the power?
Well, that'd be the ideal situation, wouldn't it? Obviously, from our perspective. One question I would like to ask, we've heard everybody talk about it being in agreement, really, that more powers should come to Wales. Can I ask people on this panel what they think about Wales having parity with Scotland on funding and on powers? And if you don't agree with that, can you give me one good reason why, please?
Niall, you had your...
I have a very straightforward answer for you. UKIP would actually get rid of the Barnett formula. It's been described as not fit for purpose by the very people that put it together. We would remove the Barnett formula. We would give Wales an exact parity with the funding given to Scotland per capita, and obviously, as UKIP would like to withdraw us from the European Union, we would make sure that funding to the Welsh Assembly and to the people of Wales stays at the same level.
Ian.
We need a new settlement for the United Kingdom, and I want the best possible deal for Wales within that.
We're not going to get... You've locked in Wales' disadvantage. When you went up to Scotland, and you vowed to the people of Scotland to keep the Barnett formula.
Carrie, I didn't interrupt you. I want the best possible deal for Wales within the United Kingdom, because I believe we're a small island and we work much better together than separating ourselves. I believe in solidarity, not driving people apart one from another. We should stick together. It's the best way forward.
What's the Green take on this?
I think I've said what I needed to say, to be honest.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what the result is come Friday anyway, and just how big a share the various nationalist parties have in the overall makeup of Westminster. Now, we have our third question from Alex Martin Jones. Is Alex here? He is indeed. Fantastic stuff. Alex, do you want to put it back? Go on, have one anyway.
As a business owner and ratepayer on 3 properties totaling nearly £4,000 per month, the current system is based on values of 2008, and the revalue is being pushed back to 2017. I would like to know what you will do to ensure the restructure of the rate system to make it a fairer system and one that reflects the current economic climate. In my opinion, this will encourage businesses to open and operate in our town centre, which currently has many vacant properties.
That question. First, Niall from UKIP.
You'll be pleased to know that if it was down to UKIP, which I sincerely hope in the future it will be, that is after all why I'm sitting here, UKIP would reduce the business rates on properties with an individual rateable value of up to £50,000 by 20%. Should you own more than one property, as long as their business rates had a cumulative value of less than £50,000, you would also attract this 20% discount. We would push for local councils to ensure for at least 30 minutes free parking in town centres. We would also remove by virtue of the fact that we're coming out of Europe if UKIP have any say, the EU regulations, which are currently costing the British economy £27 billion a year in restrictive business practices. We would allow traders to trade in both imperial and metric units, or whatever else they liked. So the metric, the full trick warriors, whatever they call themselves, would have won. I see no problem with that. Yeah, exactly. Long may the pint continue. I think you'll find Mr. Nigel Farage would agree with you on that one.
Good note on which to end. Next, from the Liberal Democrats, Rob.
Yeah, you're right. The business rates clearly need reviewing because they are far too high, and that doesn't help growth and confidence in our high street. One thing that the Liberal Democrats are they're looking at reviewing the business rate. They're also looking at introducing a land value tax, okay, which I think would be more beneficial because it would mean more efficient use of properties, and also it wouldn't penalise any business owners who want to be a bit more inventive and obviously if they want to increase their profits, they want to expand. Not literally, I mean, but they want to expand. We don't want to have that penalised. So I think the land value tax could be some way towards going towards that. But I do think that Wrexham has had some major issues, and I do think that we do need to address those. But it's going to be tough because I think that society's changed a lot over recent years.
Carrie, how do you fill the gaps that are apparent in Wrexham's town centre?
Well, business rates are key to that, and you're right, they do need reforming. Plaid's policy is to extend the business rate relief scheme, and that will benefit 83,000 businesses across Wales. But vitally, what it will do is it'll take 70,000 Welsh businesses out of paying business rates altogether. And obviously, that's a benefit to small businesses in terms of freeing up cash flow, allowing them to invest in themselves, to expand, and to create employment. 99% of businesses in Wales are classed as small to medium-sized enterprises, so it is vital that we give them as much support as possible. What we would also do is reform the multiplier system to bring Wales in line with England and Scotland as well. So we would introduce a second multiplier for large businesses, and that would generate enough revenue to fund the cuts in the multiplier for small businesses. But we set both of those lower than across the border to make sure we're competitive.
Harry, thank you. Ian Lucas, you've covered a business brief for the Labour Party. What on earth could you do for local businesses in Wrexham?
There's a hugely complex and difficult issue relating to town centres. It won't simply be resolved by the single issue of business rates, although it was the coalition government that deferred the revaluation of business rates, and that's the reason why the high level has been maintained for businesses in the town centre. What businesses say to me is that the current system is hugely inflexible, that there's a rigid system which cannot take into account the varied problems that different town centres face. And unfortunately, if you talk to business, you will hear different solutions depending on the size of the business and the particular type of work that they carry out. So if you speak to the CBI or to the British Chambers of Commerce, they have different solutions. So what we need to do is change our town centres. We need to have more people living there, and we need to have a profound conversation about the best way forward for businesses and business rates.
Brian Edwards, you've walked the streets like all the rest of these guys. You've pounded the streets, you've seen the gaps in the high street, you've seen what's coming to fill some of those gaps as well. Are there any answers?
Well, contrary to popular belief, business rate is not controlled by local councils, but by the Valuation Office. So I would call for this power to be transferred from Westminster Oval to every local authority. Business rates are only reassessed every 5 years, so although rents have actually fallen by 30% in the last 5 years or so, the business rates remain the same, ludicrously high figures. The rate must be cut to a more sensible and reasonable figure for all small businesses in Wrexham. I've spoken to many small business owners, and obviously nearly all of them of the same opinion: the rates are far too high. How long will it take the government to realise that lower rates will mean more, if not all, shops filled? The town will be more attractive to visitors, more money into local economy. It's not rocket science. If powers were transferred, I would advocate frequent liaising with local council officials and monitoring the system as regularly as possible. Plaid are proposing a good idea, which I agree with, 0 rate for small business, I believe. But this must only be for a limited period. 6 months must come with a proviso. If closing me, I'll stop there.
If it's that, just speed up. There we go. David from the Greens, what can you do to help grow small businesses here in Wrexham?
Okay, well, the Greens, I believe, are the party of small business. I'm afraid the other two, the big parties, Labour and the Conservatives, their support for big corporations, big business, has led to this problem. We would reduce employers' national insurance to 8%, paid for by wealth tax, one for Andrew. We would improve small firms' competitive edge by raising corporation tax for larger firms to 30%. We would make financing easier by developing a network of locally based banks, mutually owned, to support local communities. We would reduce VAT to 5% for tourism and hospitality. And we would hand more power to local authorities to set rates. And also, we oppose TTIP, which I think we really need to start thinking about.
Last, but by no means least, Andrew, your party calls itself the party of business. What can you do to
There's
help?
a lot we can do on this, and this is one of my main passions, is sorting out our town centre, as I said at the beginning. Business rates needs a fundamental overhaul. We've got quite ambitious plans, the Welsh Conservative Party in the Assembly. To me, they don't go far enough because it raises the threshold to sort of lift people out of paying it for small businesses. I think we've got to do something for those middle businesses as well. I think people look at that next bracket up and they think they're doing really well for themselves, they can afford it. That takes into account a lot of pubs, a lot of restaurants, a lot of nightclubs, a lot of slightly bigger shops that don't qualify for the relief. We've got to really help them as well and not just think, oh, they can afford it by that stage. Anybody who wants more information, go on my Facebook page on this. I'm working on a huge amount of plans that I've had experience in before in regenerating the town. This involves cutting down slightly the retail base. We need a sensible conversation about that, where we introduce perhaps a little bit more residential, perhaps cultural offering, perhaps a bit more office space, and we shrink that base down and we make it a really smart, attractive hub. We've got to work with planning enforcement powers that the council has got to really smarten up the town, which they've got the powers to do that, to set the standards for shops. Parking charge, I'm going to do a Brian and just talk really fast.
Well, Alex, you asked the question. You can talk as quickly or slowly as you want. What do you reckon?
Well, it's Welsh Labour it's gone up again by 2% this time. At the moment, I've got 2 rate reviews in place, which I've been told are in a holding period. When I phoned up after 6 weeks of not hearing anything from the valuation agency, they said it's still in the holding period and we haven't looked at it yet. There's a big backlog. The system can't take it. It's up to the Welsh Assembly to sort it out, and as far as I can see, they're not doing anything about it.
Guys, there's a man who has to turn a buck who actually pays into the economy here. What can we do to make his life easier? Very brief chat, Andrew.
Fundamentally, the bit, if I hadn't spoken so fast, the extra bit I'd like to chuck in is I think that like I said, it needs a fundamental overhaul in rates. But my firm belief is that actually if we cut people a little bit of slack and took less off them in the first place, people pay a lot in rate, it goes round the houses to come back, and what do we do?
And VAT as well.
If I can just finish, please, I didn't interrupt.
Actually, go on.
If I can, no, I'm making a point here, please. We take a lot of money off people, it goes round the houses, and what we then have to do, Welsh Government, the UK Parliament, we come up with grand schemes to find a lot of money to regenerate our town centres, and that money that we use to regenerate it, a lot of it comes from the business rates we took off people in the first place. So cut them some slack, let them keep their own money, employ some more people, and I'll stop talking.
Ian.
The Tories and Liberal Democrats before the 2010 election said they would not increase VAT. They did after the 2010 election. That hit small business and the high street really hard because it takes money out of people's pockets on the high street and it gives it straight to government. I sincerely hope we're not going to see that again.
Rob.
All right, just a brief thing about the VAT hike. The Lib Dems did warn before the 2010 election that the Tories were going to put VAT, and we were right. That's what they wanted us to do in coalition, and so that was one of the stalling points. Yeah. So
it didn't stall; it happened.
Yeah. No, the stalling point.
You didn't stop it.
I wasn't the MP, so I couldn't.
Not me, Bill.
Carrie, what do you reckon?
Just in terms of a bit of information, as I understand things, there is a review ongoing at the moment at Welsh Government level about this, and Plaid's policy as I described it, is being considered as an option. So I'm hoping we're going to see some movement on this fairly quickly.
David.
Well, we just obviously need a new approach because we've had Conservatives, Tories, same problems.
I just want to chuck something else in from a UKIP point of view.